Hey, Hope at Home. Welcome back to Habits Part 3. We are discussing the reality of being successful from a godly perspective on success. In other words, developing healthy habits in our everyday lives, specifically in our finances and in the way that we look at money and the way that we look at our self-esteem and our wealth and our worth and what that looks like. In the last couple of weeks together, we've been talking about like what success even looks like. Last week when we were together, we talked about the reality of, you can't love money. That's a temptation that you got to be careful, that you got to love God, and that you can't become a slave to your money. Your money is supposed to be working for you, not you working for your money. And so what does that look like, especially if we're in debt? And I want to talk today a little bit about something that I think is kind of interesting. One of the phrases that we say to young leaders or young adults even as they're growing up is, hey, I need you, when they get a little sideways, I need you to start acting your age. Like I need you, in other words, to be appropriate for where you are in life. I know you were just letting off some steam and you're just having some fun, but I need you to act your age. I thought it would be fun to continue our conversation on finance and debt with this message that I've entitled Act Your Wage. And what I mean by that is there's an appropriateness to how much money that you do have the ability to earn. And as your life grows and develops, that ability to earn kind of ebbs and flows. And we hope that it's making a consistent growth, but the reality is that there's been times in my life where I've been able to earn a lot of money, and there's been times in my life where my earning potential is diminished by the season of life that I'm in, by unemployment, by the city I live in, or the place I'm at, or the different things that I'm involved in. And so, the truth of the matter is that it ebbs and flows sometimes. Last week we talked about this passage from Proverbs chapter 22, where it says, "The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender." In other words, when you're in debt, whoever you're in debt to owns a piece of you. And so when it comes to loving God with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength, your abilities, your time, talent, treasure, testimony, that you can't give God all of it if you owe too many people too much. How can you honor God wholeheartedly when you're in debt up to your eyeballs for things that are non-essential? Now, again, I'm not speaking against using credit to purchase houses or cars as needed. I'm speaking against the idea of allowing yourself to believe that somehow having that pair of shoes or that watch or those clothes or whatever it is that you're purchasing that you can't afford, that will somehow make you successful. I've heard it said before, well, you just got to fake it till you make it. Well, I don't think that's the truth. I think you have to face it until you make it. And so my challenge to you is that you would be thinking about this idea of acting your wage. Proverbs chapter 31, verse 7 says, "One man pretends to be rich, yet has nothing." You can walk around with a nice car and nice clothes and a nice house, and it all be a facade because none of it is actually owned by you, nor do you have a system in place or a strategy in place to get to the point where you do own it instead of the bank owning you. And so a godly perspective on money, or biblical values, in other words, about money, is about us acting our wage. Or, if I could put it this way, living within our means. To the best of our ability today, to strive to start living within our means. And so for some of us, we're already upside down. And so we got to climb our way back out of that to live within our means. And I want to give you some sort of biblical perspective today that might help you do that. Biblical values when it comes to money. If you want to be successful with your finances and you need to start acting your wage, well, then you're going to have to embrace the value. So I'm going to give you some biblical values to embrace today. You're going to have to embrace the value of self-control. Right? The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Right? Self-control is probably one of the hardest, to master or produce. The fruits that we produce in our lives are a testament to our health. And so you can be loving and joyful and patient and peaceful and kind, right? You can be good, right, and gentle. But self-control seems to be the one that's the hardest for us as Americans. Because I want it, and I want it now. And so-and-so has it, so I should have it too. That's not fair. Why do they have it? They don't deserve it. I deserve it. And so we use debt to purchase or to gain or to grab a hold of these things that are like sifting sands through our hands that don't ever have any real, they're not assets. Like when you buy a house, that's an asset. But when you buy a dinner out with your friends, that's a liability. When you buy a new pair of shoes, you're like, well, my shoe collection is worth money. Yeah, and so are Beanie Babies, right? Those are liabilities. And so you're like spending money because you lack self-control. Proverbs 25:28 says, like a city whose walls are broken down is a man who lacks self-control. A lack of self-control or a lack of a commitment to developing self-control in your life, because it's a journey that we're on together, is the same. Proverbs, the book of wisdom, gives the analogy here. It makes this comparison that it's like a city that's got walls that are torn down or that is got no way to defend itself any longer. You are open to the attack of the enemy when you lack self-control. Now, again, we're talking about finances today, but this is true in your health. This is true in your career path. This is true in how you react to your teenager and your toddler when they're misbehaving. Self-control is the hallmark, the sign. It's the last of which maturity is actually coming and you're producing this godly, fruitful, I'm acting my wage, right? I'm embracing this value of self-control. Number 2, if you're taking notes, I want you to be thinking about how are you embracing the value of sacrifice. Yes, self-control is a sign of maturity, but sacrifice is also. Parents, you understand this, that sacrifice is a sign of being a grown-up. Adulting requires sacrifice. But Hebrews chapter 12, 2 says it like this, fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy, you're his joy, set before him, endured the cross. In other words, Jesus chose sacrifice because of his love for you. Part of acting your wage, part of being appropriate, part of living within your means is, yes, self-control, but also realizing that if I sacrifice a little bit now, it'll mean a lot for my future, for future generations. So example of this would be like, let's say that, you're paying $217-ish a month, per year on $14,000 of debt at 18%. If you're doing, if every month you're paying $217 on your debt of $14,500 at 18%, it's going to take you 40 years to pay off that debt. Did you hear that? So in other words, if you're paying the minimum payments on a debt of about $15,000, it's going to take you 40 years and about $100,000, a little over $100,000 to pay off $14,000. 40 years, $100,000 to pay off $14,000 at 18% interest. So maybe you have a better credit card than that. Maybe you have a worse credit card than that. Some of you have a 26% interest credit card. Now I want you to think about that for a second. But if you invest that $1,400 a year at 12%. I know that's the high end. 12% right now in our economy is the high end. You're probably more likely to get 8. But let's just, for the sake of argument, say you got in good with something and you got a 12% return for 40 years. Instead of you owing $104,000 for that $14,000, that one-time investment of that $14,000 has now became $1,350,000 and change. Now think about that. Debt continues to eat you alive. Freeing yourself from debt and leveraging that money, making your money work for you, puts you in a position where you're creating generational wealth for your kids and your grandkids. I wish that I would have learned this much later in life because I'm struggling still in my life to completely embrace this logic. And not because I don't understand it. What I believe is still shaping who I'm becoming because I was so upside down. The idea that if 40 years ago Again, I'm 47 right now, so 40 years ago I didn't have $14,000. But if 20 years ago I would have squirreled away $14,000, that's a lot of money. It is and it isn't. It is and isn't. I could have, over the course of a couple of years, 2, 3, 5 years, I could have squirreled away that much money in a savings account, and then I could have put it into a high-yield mutual account, and it could be accruing interest, and by the time it's time for me to finally retire, I would not only have enough to retire, but enough to pass on to my kids and my grandkids. My prayer for you, my hope for you, is that you would see the value of self-control, and instead of living beyond your means, that you would act your wage and start to strive to live within your means. Number 3, if you're taking notes, a biblical value that we need to embrace, obviously self-control, obviously sacrifice, but how about the value of planning for the future? Luke chapter 14, verse 28, suppose one of you wants to build a tower, won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? How many times in our life are we just spending without a plan? And we're letting our money dictate. That's why our money owns us, because our money's in charge. Our money's the boss. And we think that money is the secret to success and that wealth comes from money. No, wealth comes from money wisely put to work over time. Proverbs 21, verse 5 says, the plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. In other words, planning for your future is important. Like, I want you to be generous. I want you to be giving. I want you to go out of your way to put the things of God, your local church, missions, the hurting, the broken, the poor on your roster. But I also want you to be thinking about your kids and your grandkids and their future. I want you to have enough money to retire. I want you to have enough money to build a legacy for those coming before you. And again, there's little ways that you can do this. I don't have big money, but when I purchased my home, I made sure to purchase a home that, and this was part of my plan, right? I make a plan, work the plan. I purchased a home that has a granny flat, and each of my children have had the opportunity to live in that granny flat for at least 2 years, and during that time in the 2 years, the money that they would be paying towards rent gets put into a savings account, and so at the end of the 2 years, they have a chunk of money to start their life with. Now again, I'm not where I want to be. I wish that I had the ability to gift my children that money at the start of their marriage. Like, here's your wedding gift, $24,000. Wouldn't that be great? Here's your wedding gift, $50,000. Wouldn't that be great? I don't have that ability, but I have a plan, and I'm working the plan so that I can begin to be a blessing to the future generations. I see that I plan on living in my house probably for the remainder of my time here on the planet. I'm hoping that that'll be a rental income so that I can continue to bless people, so I can afford to go on missions trips, so that I can afford to help plant churches, so that I can love my family well. And maybe my grandkids will want to live there for the first 2 years of their experience. Wonderful. But I'm hoping by building a legacy of planning in my life that my kids will build a better legacy than I built, and that I won't be responsible for my grandkids because my kids now have what they need to be responsible for their kids. Does that make sense? It's the plan. Biblical planning is a value that you need to be thinking about. How do you see your future? If you have the view of the world that it's all going to burn, so I don't have to worry about it, and God's going to come back before my kids turn 21, so who cares? Like, you got to plan like Jesus. You got to live like Jesus is going to come back tomorrow, but you got to plan like he's not coming back for another, millennia. You got to live your life with the principles of I love God, and I tell people about him, and I serve him, and I'm stewarding my own discipleship, and I'm honoring God with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength. But I also am planning for the future because I want my kids to be taken care of in the future. So let me give you 2 baby steps, as I like to call them. These are loosely based off of some of the teachings of Dave Ramsey. I think he's got some really great stuff. Some of the stuff, he doesn't live in California, so it doesn't make perfect sense. Like Dave Ramsey says you should pay cash for your first home. Well, I don't know if in California you can do that. Maybe like in Ohio or somewhere like that, maybe you can do that. But, I don't think you can really do that in California for your first home. You're going to have to finance it as a reality. But there's some baby steps here that I think are beautiful. The first baby step, if you're going to have self-control and choose sacrifice over satisfaction, temporary satisfaction, or you're going to embrace the biblical value of planning for the future, the first baby step I want you to be thinking about is to have an emergency fund. Now, I'll give you just a simple, attainable number. Shoot for $1,000 in your emergency fund. That's the first baby step. Just to have $1,000 in a savings account. Now, for some of you, that seems so absolutely overwhelming. Then make it attainable like this. How many cups of coffee at Starbucks is that, right? How many times do you just have to not go to the movies? What would it look like if you rode your bike to work a couple more times? Like, where could you find that money? Not with massive cutbacks. You don't have to find that $1,000 this week. But where could you, over the course of the next 3 months, 6 months, a year, find that $1,000? And then once you have that emergency fund of $1,000, what if you began to build onto that emergency fund where you had, think about this. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could plan your life in such a way, I'm working towards this, I'm not there yet, where you could plan your life in such a way where you had 6 months worth of savings so that not only could you handle an emergency, but if you got laid off from your job or COVID happened again, that you could be fine financially. Again, self-control, sacrifice, and planning. These are biblical values, my friends, that would help you see through hard times. Hard times are going to come and go. Life is about good times and life's about bad times, and it's the ebb and flow of those good times and those bad times. But how we leverage what God has blessed us with to make sure that we do it, these are the values that are going to help you get there. And then the second one, which is the most powerful one, this is straight out of Dave Ramsey's book. It's called the debt snowball. I don't think he invented it, but he definitely made it super popular. The debt snowball looks like this. Let's say, for the purposes of just conversation today, you might want to write some of this down as you're taking your notes. Let's say you have 6 debtors. Let's say you have a Lowe's card, a Target card. You borrowed a little bit of money from your parents. You have a Visa card. You financed a small, affordable car, and you have a school loan. And let's say in order of Lowe's, Target, the money you borrowed from your parents, your Visa, your car, your school, let's say in a combined total that you owe about $20,000, give or take, $20,500, give or take, $21,000, something in that ballpark of the total that you owe. And the smallest one, you wrote down your list of, here's my debtors in order of who I owe the least to in succession to who I owe the most. And so in this fictitious list that I made, I owe my Lowe's card $450, owe my Target card $650. Again, fictitious list that I'm making here for the sake of the conversation. I owe my parents $1,600. My Visa is an $1,800 debt. My car payment, I got $7,000 left on that, and I got $9,000 left on my school loans. And so I make those, I list it out like that. Now, the minimum payment on my Lowe's card is $50. And so here's how the debt snowball works. I'm going to find $200 somehow. And remember, I owe $450 on that. So I'm going to take $200, and I'm going to pay $200 plus the $50 for the next couple of months. And so my new payment to Lowe's is $250. So, in a little under 2 months, I'm going to pay that completely off, right? And then I'm going to take that $200 that I found, that I'm again, I'm acting my wage, so I'm finding the money in order to be able to live within my means, and I'm stopping spending a little bit here. And again, $200 it may seem like a lot, but I think you could find it if you really worked at it. So I take that $200 plus the $50 that I was paying Lowe's, and now that debt's paid off, and so I go to my next one, my Target card. Well, it's a $30 minimum payment, and so now I'm going to take the $250 plus the $30 that I was already paying them, and now I'm paying $280, and so I'm paying $280, and a couple of months goes by, and the $650 that I owe Target is paid off. You getting the idea, right? And it starts to snowball because I take the debt that I already had and that $200 extra a month that I'm figured out how to do it. Maybe you got a side hustle, maybe you're babysitting, maybe you stop drinking coffee out in public and you make it all at home yourself. Whatever it is, you found that $200 and you start to begin to do that debt snowball. And what happens is you get to the point where now when it's time to pay off my school loan, that's $9,000 is what I've got left. That'd probably be a pretty great school loan for most people if that's all they had left. And my minimum payment is $200 a month. I've debt snowballed everything down where I have $910 a month that now I'm debt free from that I can apply to that school loan, plus the $200 that I decided to go over and above with, and I'm paying $1,100 and $10 a month towards my school loan. So in a little under 9 months, my entire school debt's paid off. So I'm completely debt free. If I would have paid the minimum, again, this is about $20,000, give or take. If I would have paid the minimum on those payments, it would have taken me 120 months. That's 10 years. 10 years to pay that debt off. And again, that's a small amount of debt spread out over a few different, creditors. And so the debt snowball allowed me to pay that off in 21 months. So in less than 2 years, by acting my wage and finding $200 a month that I could put towards my debt to make me free so that I can experience the true freedom, financial freedom, no longer being a slave to debt, to find that financial freedom, now I'm debt free. That's a difference. Listen to that now. 21 months. That's a difference of 99 months. Dude, think about that for a second. Now, what if you took that income that you had, right? Because now you have an additional $1,110 that you're used to spending on your debt that's doing nothing. What if you took that $1,110 and instead of living outside of your means, you started to invest that? What if for the next 99 months, that's what you would have had left on your debt, you invested that? At 8% interest, $1,110 for 99 months, right, or 8 years, right, would yield you about $150,000. So instead of you, check this out, you ready? Instead of you paying all that money to pay off your debt and it taking you 120 months to pay off $20,000, you've now paid that off in 21 months, and then you've leveraged your money. You've put your money to work for you instead of you working for your money. And at the end of that 8 years, it's 10 years in total, because it took you 21 months to pay off your debt, a little under 10 years. And at the end of the 8 years of investment, you have $153,000, almost $154,000. I mean, who wouldn't want $154,000 in their savings? I mean, that is a good jump start on a house payment. And you're like, well, that's 8 years. Yeah, but think about that. What if you would have started that? We talked last week about the average debt amongst a young adult is, by the time they're 21 years old, is about $14,000. So what if you would have done this from the beginning? What if you could go back and do it now? Again, I want you to think about where you were 8-10 years ago. If you're honest with yourself, most of us, especially those of us who are older and we're playing catch up, 10 years ago went by like that. 10 years could go like that. And you could be in a place where you have way more financial freedom in the next decade if you make a plan and work the plan. What does it take to do that? It takes the biblical values of self-control, sacrifice, right? Think about that. Self-control, sacrifice, and planning for the future. And you start with these baby steps. And again, even if you didn't invest the money, even if you just started getting yourself to a place that over the course of the next 2 years, I'm going to start living debt-free. Why? Why would I do that? Well, Proverbs talks about this. The biblical value of being debt-free, and then this is Proverbs 6:5. Free yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter. Like to be able to leap and jump and run and to be, just free to live your regular life the way God intended you to live, instead of always worrying about when the debt collectors are coming, who's calling. This biblical value of self-control, sacrifice, and planning can help us to break free from the chains of debt and financial strain. When we act our wage, we're making intentional choices with our resources to create opportunities for financial stability. Let's pray together. God, we pray that you would encourage us and strengthen us as we strive to eliminate our debt. Lord, that you would give us self-control, that it would develop in us so that we could wisely recognize that our financial decisions and that they would have profound impact on the lives of the other people that you've entrusted to us. Lord, we seek you today for guidance, and we lean on you for strength as we navigate this path towards financial freedom. Lord, help us right now in this moment as we make a commitment to act our wage, to live within our means. Lord, to put you first, Lord, but also to put our money to work for us instead of being a slave to our money. God, you are our provider, and so we are living out our lives in faith in every aspect of our life, Lord, with you giving us strength. Lord, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Even get out of debt, even provide a financial legacy for my family, even get to the place where I no longer have to serve money, but my money serves the interests of me as I serve my God. In your name we pray. Amen.